When you join ASUG, you'll never face an SAP challenge alone again. We connect our members to exclusive educational opportunities and a community of like-minded peers, so you can get the most value from your SAP investment. Get smart fast and learn from the best. Stay on the leading edge of SAP practices and get access to the latest research, insights, and unbiased editorial and interviews from industry experts and your peers. Expand your network. ASUG makes up the biggest, most diverse, and most engaged SAP user group in the world. Any question or challenge you have, there's someone who's seen it before. Connect with a network of 130,000 plus SAP savvy professionals to solve complex business challenges, work smarter, and expand your SAP skills. Get set to lead. Improve your SAP expertise by collaborating with peers to solve business challenges and find innovative solutions. With 38 regional chapters, you and your teams can connect and meet with other SAP professionals and take advantage of dozens of speaking and leadership opportunities throughout the year where you can share your ideas. Become a leader in the ASUG community by leading a local chapter, joining our executive exchange, and participating in one of our 13 and growing ASUG Alliance groups, or make connections and learn at ASUG events. Keep learning, connecting, and growing with ASUG.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and welcome to Moving to S/4HANA. We'll show you how. I'm Heather Lima, and I'm a content producer here at ASUG. Today's webcast will be recorded, and you'll receive a post-event email with a link to the on-demand recording of this webcast, along with a link to our 2-question survey. Please take a moment to take that survey, and also, if you feel like passing on the on-demand recording of this webcast to your colleagues, please do. If you have any questions, go ahead and enter them in that Q&A box. We'll be answering questions at the end of the webcast. Any questions we don't get to today, we'll make sure we answer them offline. So now I'll hand off our webcast to our speaker, Sean Fitzpatrick, the co-founder of Versafile. Sean, take it away.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And hello and good day, everyone. And thank you for taking some time to join us today. Sincerely hope we make good use of your time and you get value from our session. So my name is Sean Fitzpatrick. I'm one of the co-founders at Versafile and I've been working in what we call the enterprise content management and integration space since the late 90s. So also joining us today is Al Ling, Director of Business Applications and ERP at the University of Mississippi, and Chris Provence, Associate Director of Business Applications and ERP at the university. And so Al leads the IT team responsible for SAP and Box at the university, and I might mention is an ASUG champion, while Chris and team technically deliver, and not just on internal systems, but Chris also teaches information management for ERP and is part of the SAP Education Series program, actively teaching classes using SAP systems. So thank you both, gentlemen, for both being here and taking time out of your busy schedules to share your story. In addition, I'd like to thank Box for sponsoring this event and putting it all together. It takes a lot of work, and we greatly appreciate that. And last but not least, I'd like to thank ASUG for the work they do to create both national and regional opportunities for us all to assemble and learn from each other to better our businesses and careers. And I'm happy to say, so this is, I'm actually at an ASUG event today in Vancouver. So I'm broadcasting live from the SAP offices in Vancouver, and was at ASUG yesterday in San Francisco. So lots going on with this organization. So at the outset, I'd like to share that our session today, while focused on finding ways to help you get to S4 or enhance how you use S4, these methods, approaches, tools, and platforms are very content-centric that we're going to talk about today. This is our slice in the big world of SAP. It's really our mission to help you modernize and provide alternatives that help you get more business value from your SAP platform, save costs, find ways to continuously gain efficiencies by streamlining, and of course, improve content-centric business processes, which range from invoice management to work orders to how to onboard a new student in the University of Mississippi. That's the use case we'll be talking about today. So let's get started. So first off, I thought I'd share a little bit of data. 2027 as a target date to be on S4 is coming on fast, right? We all know that. SAP suggests over 30% of their customers are now on S4. And so we were curious, how close is our customer base in getting to S4? And here's what we found out. So roughly 33% of our customers are either there or partially there with a hybrid solution. This generally aligns with what we hear from SAP, that 30% plus of customers are now on S4, and this is growing quarterly, of course. Of the 68% of our customers still running ECC, 48% are now in the budgeting, planning, or executing phases of evolving beyond ECC, whatever that may mean. And then around 50% are planning on RISE and 50% deploying to their own hyperscaler tenant. So the conclusion, I'm sure no surprise, but the push over the next 3 years will be stressful and expensive as resources are limited. So what can we be doing about it today? And that's really what we're here to talk about, is since Box and Versafile are such content-centric organizations, this is where our focus is. So let's keep moving from here. And by joining the dots together and talk about how our solutions can help move us and you down the S4 path at less cost and hopefully with less risk. So let's start by taking a quick look at the key content-centric challenges we're hearing from our SAP customers. The first we want to talk about is the size of your database. If you're still on ECC, you'll have to consider migration time and efforts to get to S4. This is a worry because some of you are storing document attachments in the database and you have not embarked on data archiving. Many have, but not all. Addressing both of these issues can help reduce not only the size of your database, but of course, reduce the time, the cost, and the risk associated with your move to S4. If you're already on S4 and storing documents in your HANA database, then you're probably experiencing immediate pain as the costs for HANA are obviously much higher and takes more infrastructure to sustain that performance. So you should be doing something about this ASAP. The next biggest problem is traditional content management platforms are what we find called monolithic and on-prem. They're big, they're heavy, they're expensive. Most companies have at least one of these connected to their SAP system, and they just don't provide the value or the ROI that they used to, or they've run their course. This also extends to legacy repositories or systems that have been moved to like a hyperscaler, such as Azure or AWS. The cost to sustain these systems is still very high. You still need the technical resources. You still need to do the upgrades. And even though they're now in the cloud, they are not cloud native, and hence the effort and cost don't really change that much. These systems also tend to have a high friction point. What I mean by that is they're difficult to use, which comes to challenge number 3, user collaboration. User collaboration is typically low in these systems, and if the system is not being used properly, then people are using other systems in the shadows to do their work, like email. And this has a direct cost. It is less efficient, has an impact on security and compliance, which is why customers are worrying more about breaches these days. 60% of ERP systems have suffered some type of breach. 70% originated via email. So why are people emailing documents around? Because the legacy systems are too hard to use. So why do we want to get our arms around this? Is it worth paying attention to? Why not just stick with what we have? It starts with our move to S4, and in which is the primary purpose of our call today. So customers are storing attachments in the SAP database, and, are achieving those that are now moving that out of the database and archiving the data are achieving 30 to 50% reduction in database size when they move to a third-party repository for, again, attachment archiving and or implementing ADK data archiving. If you're on ECC or S4, it is worth doing this now. Why? Smaller database equals less sustainment costs, lower licensing and infrastructure costs, particularly on HANA. Smaller database equals smaller migration from ECC to S4. Smaller migration equals less time to get to S4. Less time equals less cost, particularly if you're using a GSI, global system integrator. And of course, less time and activities during the heat of the migration itself equals less risk. Worth doing? We think so. So depending on the size of your SAP implementation, our data shows there are hundreds of thousands to $1 million plus to be saved just by doing this. This alone, we think, is worth the price of following this path. Okay, so why not just do this with our legacy document management or storage system? Well, again, it's pretty clear evidence that by moving your attachment and your data archiving loads to a content cloud, will generate hard dollar cost savings on licensing, infrastructure, on-site or in your hyperscaler, internal system administration, legacy ECM skills development and attainment and sustainment, and of course, of the consultants to be doing the upgrades to keep your ECM system in compliance with not only your internal policies and procedures, but just support it. So you'll hear about the cost savings that Ole Miss achieved in the next segment of this webcast, and that's really another big area of opportunity for you. The next big item is around secure collaboration. And this is where organizations are looking to the future and wanting to align with their digital transformations, right? To be truly digitally connected, and not only internally, but with your customers and your partners and suppliers for streamlined operations and better experiences, you need a way to securely collaborate on business content, both inside and outside of SAP. It's extremely difficult with a legacy ECM where the friction for users is too high. It's just too difficult to share that content safely and securely outside the firewall. So they revert to traditional collaboration via email. We've already mentioned why this is bad. 70% of data breaches and attacks originate via email. So the less email we use, the better. We won't be able to eliminate email, but if we can limit it to secure and controlled links, our security posture increases immensely. And even further, your content cloud provider should have built-in controls to be scanning for infected content and prevent ransomware attacks, etc., on your content. So there's also a few other added benefits too. And looking at the bottom row, additional benefits include the opportunity for greater process automation, automating how those purchase orders get distributed and out to your vendors, avoiding or replacing custom code with no-code, low-code solutions, and of course, applying cost-efficient content governance that is aligned with your system of information lifecycle management. And so being connected with your system of record, SAP, we can direct metadata bidirectionally, but we can direct metadata down to that content to be consistently and systematically applying governance policy. So in Box and Versafile, we feel there's both a short-term and a long-term path forward that can start to add immediate benefit, starting with your core enterprise content management platform. So, we look at Box, and Box provides a robust, secure content cloud that with enterprise licensing comes with unlimited storage, process automation tools, and most importantly, easy-to-use collaboration tools, which is what we love the most. The cost to sustain a Box environment is typically a fraction of a traditional ECM. We've proven that. When we add DocuFlow to the mix, a deep integration is available, not only with ECC and S4, but SuccessFactors as well. And we'll continue to add more applications as our roadmap continues to grow. But this allows us and you to move your content workloads to the cloud, native cloud, seamlessly and with little to no impact on your end users, because we've built-in migration tools that'll allow that to happen. What does this really mean? So by migrating your content out of the SAP database, or by moving it from an on-prem legacy system to the Box cloud, you can immediately start to save costs and tick some of the tasks off your S/4HANA project plan, saving further costs and reducing risks. So more specifically, this chart gives you a better sense of what the bidirectional Box and SAP integration provides. First off, the product is SAP certified, so you're safe. It helps you stick with a clean core and provides all the expected base level SAP archive functions you would expect, including ADK data archiving, outbound attachment archiving, message output storage, and metadata transfer, bidirectional, by the way. However, the product has a whole suite of what we call advanced features and pre-built solutions, including web services API, administrator workbenches, and built-in content migration utilities, like I mentioned already. These are important tools that give you the flexibility to easily and cost-efficiently get your content either from the database or a legacy ECM to the Box Content Cloud. And once you have satisfied these needs, our virtual linking, process automation, inbound linking capabilities will allow you to either replace custom ABAP applications and BAPIs or streamline currently manual processes that require data entry and email approvals and routings or spreadsheet-based tracking. All that stuff, that manual stuff we want to get rid of. So let's get a bit more specific. Starting in SAP, and this is how our system works. As users attach documents to an SAP business object, DocuFlow is configured to kind of wake up and go to Box, look for a folder. It should file the attachment in. If it doesn't exist, it will create it and then file the document. It'll also transfer key metadata, such as document type, a customer ID, part numbers, you name it. The software can be configured to transfer what is needed securely for the business. So why would you want metadata on your documents in a repository? Well, this would allow you to automate tasks outside of SAP, such as e-sign or approvals or other collaboration with a business partner, for example. It would also allow non-SAP users to search and find content for non-SAP purposes. So the same approach applies for message output, purchase orders, sales invoices, and the like. I guess also outbound from SAP would also include ADK data archiving, print lists if you use them, and of course attachments to DMS as well, or your document information records in more of the plant maintenance world. If we turn it around and now look at Box, and if a user or a portal or a batch operation was to add content to Box, the system would reach out to SAP, find the associated SAP business object, and create an archive link from the business object to the document in Box. It would also take the opportunity to transfer metadata to Box, thereby enriching the document's metadata in Box, and giving it that value, that extra value add. Finally, the system's also able to automate processes. We kind of touched on this already a bit, but both inside and outside of SAP. An example I love to use is when a PO is generated, issued out of SAP, DocuFlow will not only add that document to Box, but will also initiate a Box sign event and send a secured link for the PO to the vendor where they could acknowledge the PO and download it. DocuFlow would then update SAP that the PO has been acknowledged, attach the updated document. And while these are micro automations that save maybe minutes per transaction, when you total it across thousands of transactions annually, the streaming can really add up in a great way. So now I would like to hand it over to the team from Ole Miss to tell us about their experience taking their content management from on-prem to the content cloud. So Alan, Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you everyone for allowing us to come tell our story, and for ASUG and Box for putting this on. Again, my name is Al Ling. I am the Director of Business Applications and ERP Support at the University of Mississippi. Also have Chris Province, my Associate Director, with me, and I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. I am in my 29th year at the university, and my claim to fame at the moment is I'm one of the few remaining project team members that put in SAP some 24, 25 years ago. You can see on the screen, our enrollment on the Oxford campus is just a little more than 20,000 students, which is not huge by university standards, but we're in a small town in Northwest Mississippi, about an hour south of Memphis. So 20,000 students essentially doubles our population every year. We had a record freshman class this fall. We are on track to break that record again for next fall, which is a unique trend among our peers in the South. Many institutions are finding declining enrollment, and we're growing, which is a very good problem to have. We got a little over 2,000 faculty. You can see we are a scanning and ingesting machine. We ingest 20,000 attachments a month and have 30,000 plus retrievals per month. We were one of the first universities that implemented SAP in the late 90s. We implemented the classic back office functions, payroll, HR, finance, etc. And then in 2002, 2003, we were asked to be SAP's North American pilot site for their student information system called Student Lifecycle Management. Now, the good news with that was that we got to go first and got to influence the design and architecture of that system. The bad news was that we got to go first. So there was a lot of gap fill that we had to account for. And once we power our our entire university on SAP at the moment includes 5 regional campuses. We are a very lean IT staff, and so when we look for solutions, we are very much a roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty type of IT shop. And as I'll get to in a minute, that sort of led us to Sean and his team as we got into the proof of concept. Where are we in our ERP journey? We are on ECC 6.0. We are on the HANA database. We did make one good decision 20 years ago in that we did not store our digital imaging content on our SAP file system. We kept that outside of that system. So as part of student lifecycle management, we had the need for a ECM, or what we just commonly called a quote digital imaging system. And at the time, as Sean mentioned before, that it was an on-premise system, and in the early 2000s it was state of the art. But as it aged, it was starting to show its years. It was starting to show its age. The vendor, was not progressing in terms of innovation as fast as we wanted. Another issue for us is we have approximately 2.5 to 3 million image files that had to get backed up every night, and they were stored on our on-premise storage. And as we grew and grew and grew, backups became an issue. So in early 2019, we knew we were going to have to renew our ECM system. And in the state of Mississippi, that was going to require a full-blown RFP process. So we took the time, we started exploring to see, what was out there. We had gotten a subscription, a license, whatever you want to call it, to Box about a couple of years prior, and we really liked what Box offered. So we got to thinking, is there a way that we can find a partner that will allow us to basically continue what we're doing in terms of ingesting content, which was by scanning, and we wrote several applications that, for example, a student can apply for admission and have some supporting documents. Those got uploaded, processed, attached to the student object in SAP, could get viewed through the attachment list or through a web application, etc. So we wanted to keep all that, but we wanted to move our storage to the cloud if we could. So we were searching for a vendor that was ArchiveLeak certified or SAP certified. They needed to use Box for the image repository, and we were really hopeful that they would do a proof of concept with us. And our CIO Emerita wrote to me in an email and said, "Hey, I have found this company called VersaFile, and this looks like exactly what we want." So you've heard of salespeople doing cold calls. Well, this was the exact reverse. I did a cold call to VersaFile and said, "Hey guys, this is what we're looking to do." And the conversations progressed to where, we were able to do a proof of concept. The software did what we were wanting it to do. And as a result, we issued the RFP and entered into a partnership. I don't like to call it a vendor customer. I like to call it a partnership with VersaFile, and we have been pleased ever since. So with that, I'm going to pass the ball to Chris and let him get more into the technical details of what we did and how we did it. So take it away, Chris.
Thanks, Al. So as we were exploring VersaFile, again, we had been on our legacy ECM for 15 years. And initially, I was on the original implementation project, and I was the technical lead for our first, what we call digital imaging project or campaign. And at first, whenever we started talking VersaFile, I'll admit that I was a little skeptical. You know, we're always used to having all of our documents in-house secured in our data center. What does this mean? But I quickly found out that Box provided us to leverage Box, it provided us the storage capability, the backups, the security that we needed. What we were really looking for and what we really valued in the DocuFlow product was that number one, it had to be out of the box SAP integration. Just we couldn't spend a lot of time trying to write a lot of custom code to integrate with this product. And that's one thing that we liked about DocuFlow. It was already SAP certified, bring in the transport, and it's ready to go with just some configuration. We needed something to migrate. Al mentioned we had over 3 million documents that were in our current system that need to be migrated. We ended up migrating 3.1 million documents. But we needed something that had a migration tool built in, not only to get documents from our current repository, our current archive link repository, but also the few documents that we had actually stored within SAP that we discovered through this process that users were using. So we actually made some discoveries in our SAP system along the way, but we needed tools to migrate all those documents. DocuFlow had that built in. We wanted something that was a configuration first strategy, because while we are ABAP developers here, we didn't want to spend a lot of time developing code while we were trying to do a migration, while we were trying to implement this product, because we are a lean IT shop. So we wanted something that was very configuration driven rather than necessarily code driven. But we did find that DocuFlow had the API, and since we are developers here, we do like a good API. And so having that DocuFlow API available for our use in our custom programs has been invaluable for helping us to port documents out to web interfaces through our enterprise portal system and in other ways. So being able to call that API is invaluable. And of course, the bidirectional metadata flow, being able to send metadata out to Box to store on documents, being able to bring that in when a document hits Box, to bring in the document and the document link and the metadata with it into SAP. That's been great, because we can take that metadata, we can go and actually update SAP objects based on that metadata. So that was really critical to us. In the end, having DocuFlow, we migrated, like I said, 3.1 million documents. We started that process. We started the implementation of DocuFlow in March of 2020. And of course, right after we started it, COVID really hit strong, and it shut the university down about 2 to 3 weeks into the start of the project. But even given that and having to work remotely, we were still able to get DocuFlow fully implemented and get all documents migrated and go live by September of 2020. So less than about 7 months later, which was actually a good 45 days ahead of schedule, because we need to be done by the end of October. So we were 45 days ahead of schedule getting all of our documents migrated and being live. As I mentioned before, the API has been great for our custom applications. And of course, now having enhanced SAP UI elements, particularly being able to move from the built-in SAP attachment list in the generic object services to now being able to use DocuFlow's Doc Manager, which provides our users much more information on their documents just at a glance. A good example of that is within about a week of going live, our our payroll manager called me and said, I love the new doc manager. I can find the files that I need and I don't have to go searching for them like I did in the attachment list. So we called that a definite win. So I'm going to turn it back over to Al so he can wrap up the UM portion of this.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So, we went live in the middle of the pandemic, and, how have the 5 years been? Well, first and foremost, at a university, every dollar you can save, you're patted on the back for. So we have realized between $750,000 to $1 million in cost savings over these first 5 years. Some of that is cost of software. A lot of it is the cost of reduced storage, less overhead in terms of system administrators having to perform those backups, etc. Again, as Chris mentioned, we migrated 3 million documents in the middle of a global pandemic, 45 days ahead of schedule. We were able to decommission our legacy ECM at its end of life. So all of this has put us in a good position to move from ECC once our evaluation process completes. We've been pleased with how integrated it is across all of the areas of SAP that we use. And now we're starting to look at some of those things that Sean mentioned earlier. Some process automation is now, what we're turning our attention to. And I think the quote that you see there pretty much sums up how we have felt about this experience and with partnering with VersaFile. If every partner that we have to deal with was as easy to work with and as good as to work with these guys, the sky's the limit on what we could accomplish. So with that, Sean, the ball's in your court.
Perfect. Thank you, Al, and thank you, Chris. Greatly appreciate you, again, taking the time out and on such a busy day to share your story with our audience. And for our attendees, if you'd like to read or download the entire story, please scan the QR code on the screen here. You'll be taken instantly to the PDF version of the story. You can pass that along or do what you need to do with it. And before we close out the session, I'll keep this screen up. I would like to open it up for questions and answers. And I see that there's a few in the chat already. If you have a few minutes and you want to submit a question to Al, Chris, or myself, please enter it into the chat now, and we can answer that. And so, Heather, I see some of these questions in here right now. Would you like me to start taking a crack at some of these?
Sure.
Cool. All right. So
that'd be great. Yeah.
So one of the questions here is DocuFlow similar to OpenText? And so yes, in ways, and in other ways, no. So in the OpenText world, OpenText wants you to archive all of your content into an OpenText repository, and that's not what we do. So we want to be able to allow you as a customer to choose your repository, and we think Box is the lighter, most cost-effective choice for doing that. So in that sense, we're a bit different. We do have pretty much similar functionality. We are certified, and so pretty much would do what an OpenText would do. The next question is, can you please confirm the % of customers willing to move to public cloud? I saw 0% customers willing to move to S4 public cloud that was presented in the opening slide. Yes, and so probably a misunderstanding on that. So that's not a percentage of customers willing to move to public cloud. Those are the percentages of our customers on public cloud already. And so we don't have any customers on SAP public cloud at the moment. We do have a lot of interest in public cloud, so much so that we will be supporting document management service on public cloud here by the end of June. So things change in the public cloud world. No longer supports Archive Link formally as you would know it today. Instead, the new standard from SAP is CMIS, Content Management Interoperability Standard. And so that's the new approach, and that's the approach will be taken for public cloud, and that will also go through a certification process. There's another question related to database size. Can you speak to how or why we would consider this if we already use SAP Content Server for document storage? That's a great question. So SAP Content Server for document storage is a great solution if you're just looking for an isolated place to go put your to store your documents or to store your attachments. So absolutely that works 100%. However, we have customers, and many customers don't want a separate repository. They want to put that content into their standard repository so they can apply their standard governance. Secondly, they may want to use that content outside of SAP. Thirdly, they may want to apply metadata to that content so they can apply better searchability and governance principles to it, and or use it in business processes that are outside of SAP. So those are some of the reasons why you would use our content server. So we do have built-in SAP content servers into DocuFlow. It's all following the SAP standards. It's just allowing you to do all of that into Box instead of a isolated piece of storage. Next question is, does this support a migration concept, ECC to S4, for all of our document content in GOS, services for objects, linked to master data objects, master materials, etc., into a Box repository? So the answer is yes. So we have built-in migration tools that allow us to move content from either in the ECC database or on a storage device or some other third-party repository that's been archive linked out to that. The built-in migration tools, just like Ole Miss used, will allow you to move it from that legacy repository into the Box Content Cloud, as well as synchronize any extra metadata you would like on those documents, as well as update and replace the links within at each SAP business object. Next question is, do you have integration with OpenText? So we don't with the latest OpenText. We do have some legacy customers using Documentum, but most customers that we have there are moving to more of a true content cloud like Box. There's some other questions that have been added here. Did the document approval use SAP workflow functionality or external Box approval features? It's a great question. Both options are available depending on the use case. What's the best approach? So we leverage built-in SAP workflow with we have a layer called TrackLink. It's all configurable, so you don't have to get out, you don't have to be custom developing your SAP workflows. TrackLink lets you configure review and approval processes with rules and notifications all within SAP, both in ECC, S4, and is Fiori friendly. And so that's we often use that for invoice processing or reviewing documents internally within SAP users. We do have use cases where we will kick off a workflow process outside of SAP. So for example, we have a customer that is, when they generate a work order, will automatically go set up a folder in Box, apply document templates, and then kick off a Box workflow to get people in the plant to fill in those templates. When those templates are completed and signed off, we then go back up into SAP, update the workflow and the work order so that they can continue on the process there. So there's an example of both. I've got one more question here. Well, S4 allows for GOS document storage. This seems like finally a way to migrate those GOS documents from ECC into a proper content repository while maintaining the object links. Is that correct? So yes, so that does allow us to move those documents and get them into that cloud storage repository. Again, not only do we update the links from the SAP business object, but we can also transfer metadata down to those documents. So then you can start using those documents for other parts of your business process or applying governance to those documents. This would be a question for Al or Chris. Why did Ole Miss choose VersaFile over SAP's built-in migration cockpit to move content? Maybe Chris, you can take that one on.
Sure.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. Whenever we took on DocuFlow, we were working closely with the DocuFlow, the VersaFile developers and technical staff, and we were reviewing the migration tools within DocuFlow, and it just made perfect sense because it was able to take all of our content, even from our legacy ECM, and bring it over because Archive Link was in place in the middle. So it was able to bring those documents over very efficiently. And that's what I really liked about it, was I was able to keep a close eye on which documents were migrated, which ones failed, which ones needed to be redone. So it had a beautiful cockpit already ready for me within DocuFlow. And since that was going to be our end use anyway, or the product of choice anyway, we wanted to stick with that and use the tools that VersaFile had already developed there.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
I see. Do you use DocuSign
kind
of feature box for e-signaturing, and have this supported by is this supported by DocuFlow? The short answer to that is we have the box sign solution teed up. We have been using it in small pilot situations, and we're planning a general rollout later this year.
Perfect. And all right. So I think we've got time for maybe one more question, Heather. Maybe two, but we'll start with this one. Does the integration support both synchronous and asynchronous pattern to not impact SAP performance? And the answer is yes. So we can do things in batch, or we can do things in real time. So all of that is covered. You pick the solution or the choice that works best for your particular platform. And then what are all the message attachment types that are supported in this integration solution? It's a great question. I don't know if there's any limitation. If you can attach it to a record to an SAP record, we should be able to manage that. The viewability of that, it may be restricted by the viewer that you're using. So the box viewer supports, I don't know, well over 250 different types of documents. So we haven't come across any real limitations at this point in time, but there's an entire list from Box that we can get on the viewer. It certainly supports more than what is natively available within the SAP viewer. And then our last question, for content migrated from GOS in ECC to S4, where do you get the metadata used to enrich the Box document entry? I thought GOS didn't store any metadata fields. Are you gleaning metadata from the file contents or file name or external enhancements? Yeah, so it's a great question. So you're correct in that GOS doesn't store much metadata at all. So what we're doing is we are deeply integrated and embedded within SAP. So we have metadata mapping configurations that will allow you to map SAP data to metadata fields in Box. And so that's how we do that. And it's also, and as that metadata changes, we can also change that metadata on the records in Box. Why is that important? Let's say, for example, in an HR scenario, where you have an employee that terminates, that updated termination date, we want to stream that down to the content in Box so that you can launch the proper governance policies on that content. Yeah. All right. So, Heather, I think we've come to the end of our session. I'm sure there's potentially more questions. If people have more questions, then we can certainly happy to take those on the side, or continue to forward those in, and we'll follow up on them on those directly afterwards.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Sean. This has been a really great webcast, and thank you for all the questions that have come in. As Sean mentioned, we will answer these offline. And in the meantime, you guys will receive a post-event email tomorrow with the on-demand link to this webcast, along with a link to the 2-question survey. Please take a moment to fill that survey out. We like to know what you think. So thanks so much. And there is a QR code up on the screen right now. Go ahead and scan it. You can get the full story there. And thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.